Now, what ports are sometimes used as the names for these physical connections on the back of your computer where you plug in cables, but this is a virtual port, if you like. These ports act like that, in that you plug into port 80, now you're talking to the web server, plug into port 25, you're talking to the SMTP server. It might as well be a different cable, but in fact all the data comes in on the same connection and it's sorted at the other end by a logical port. So that's as you saw, is just a number passed in the header which tells your machine what to do with the data. HTTP on the web server end is always port 80. On the client end, it's a random number. As you saw there, mine was like 1330 for one browser, next browser was 1336. Your machine just starts at a number greater than 1024 and just adds one for every local port, for every new application you open until your machine resets. There's a 16-bit number for ports, so there's a total of 65,000 and change ports available for TCP and UDP, which is enough for most people. All right. You can block ports on your router and at your firewall. This is typically the simplest thing a firewall does, is block traffic on illegal ports. It's not enormously effective to stop evil attacks because attacks can come in on the wrong port, but it does limit a lot of things. And this is the simple thing people do usually to block things like chat and games and webcams and stuff at a company, is just block the ports those applications run on. It doesn't work very well anymore because the people that write the chat clients have wised up, and things like Skype will sneak past whatever you got. It will change what port it's using as necessary to get past your firewall. And but old-fashioned things like older games and IRC are hardwired to a certain port, and old attacks like back orifice. And if you block that port, you block the traffic. If you block all the ports, you might as well pull the cable. Nothing's going to get in, so that's no good. You want to let through the good traffic and stop the bad traffic. And like I mentioned at the start of class with that denial of service news article, that is a really hard problem because the bad guys are constantly getting better and better at making the evil traffic look like the good traffic. If they did you the favor of having an easy to distinguish difference between the good and bad traffic, then you can block it with something simple like blocking a port. But the more modern attacks are onto that, and you'll have to do something more clever to block them. So you should know some well-known ports. The first 1,023 ports are just assigned to standard services and well-known, and you don't use them for temporary ports on your machine. So you should know some of the most famous ones. 20 and 21 are used by file transfer protocol. It actually uses some other high-numbered ports too, but it usually uses 20 and 21. This lets you move, yeah?
So you're saying that port 20 and 21 on the client side
No.
is not on the client side, but on the server side?
Well, FTP is a special case. I was just reading it today. I should know it better. It's on the server side, certainly 20 and 21. It doesn't use 20 or 21 on the client. It's on the server side. It'll be used two different high-numbered port numbers on the client side, I think, though. But all these things, the main thing I'm talking about here is on the server side. The FTP server has to have port 20 and 21 coming in to control FTP. All right, now FTP requires a name and password to get in. A lot of people do use FTP to move files around with a name and password, which is foolish because that's not encrypted. So it's easy to steal with a sniffing attack like you folks do in one of the early projects. Just turn on a sniffer and steal passwords as they go by. But it's more secure than trivial file transfer protocol that doesn't even use a name and password at all. Just physically connecting to the other end is enough to move data in. And so there was a worm that came out about 5 years ago that would move data in on your machine with TFTP, and that was when people first decided they all had to have firewalls in their machine, because now you could just connect to the internet, not even open a browser or anything, and you get infected, because stuff just comes in on TFTP, which was turned on by default in Windows operating systems at the time. So if you connect to an FTP site through a browser, it's going to ask you for a username and password. It might obscure it on the screen, but it doesn't obscure it in the network traffic, so what was the point of that? You just sprayed your password out to everybody between you and the other end, and everybody sniffing the network within range of a wireless access point anywhere you're going? Yeah?
That's what I was going to ask you about, whether that password is only visible within the network that you're using. Once you get outside of the router, is it accessible?
That's a very good question. Is it visible? Anybody that can get the traffic, which means anybody in the same room as you're in, anybody at the server or connected to the server, anybody at the ISP, or any place at the other ISP, every tagging you send is easily sniffed by about 100 machines between here and there. And if any step of it is wireless, you have no idea where it went. So you're just asking for it. You might as well have published it in the newspaper as send something in the clear over the internet, because it goes all over the place. And there are agents on compromised machines at all those levels harvesting the passwords. They've found them now and then. They've compromised them and found their list of 20,000 FTP passwords. There's no excuse for FTP or Telnet. Everybody should block FTP and Telnet at the router and not let anybody use it. We shouldn't be using it here. It's disgraceful. All you do with those is you harass your users, because your user has to know the password, but the bad guys can get the password easily. So it's the opposite of security. Security should make your users comfortable and the bad guys uncomfortable. This just wastes time. I'm always having students forget their password and you have to do something to get them on, but it's not going to stop the bad guys. The secure alternative is SSH. Use SSH to replace Telnet and FTP. Then it scrambles the passwords, and then you have reasonable security. And port 25 is simple mail transfer protocol used to send mail on the internet. So all email servers are going to have that. DNS is port 53, TCP and UDP, actually. The UDP is used for normal requests and the TCP for zone transfers. So if you want to get picky, you could block the TCP, and that would be a good security move. Anyway, this lets you convert alphabetic domain names like yahoo.com into numerical ones so you can use them. Port 69 is that trivial file transfer protocol I mentioned. It's useful to move firmware around for phones and routers, but it's not secure in any way, and it shouldn't be open to the internet on your network unless you're nuts, because then anybody can just transfer files into your network from the internet. Port 80 is what you must have open if you want to get normal web pages going out. Your web server has to accept requests on port 80. And port 110 is post office protocol. You need to have that open between your email server and your local clients so they can download their mail in POP3 clients like Outlook and Eudora. Port 119 is for old NNTP, which I think has got to be about over. Does anybody use Usenet News? That's one. You actually use it through Google or you use it through NNTP? Google, yeah. Because Google bought the archives. I've never had anybody in my classes in like a year or two that actually uses this anymore. I think it's over. There's an even older thing called Gopher that's long gone and forgotten. The last Gopher server shut down about 5 years ago. Anyway, it still exists. But I think in reality, almost everybody's blocking it. In fact, ISPs don't even provide this anymore typically. It's essentially extinct. Google provides another way to get the same information just through HTTP. 135 is remote procedure calls, and 139 is NetBIOS. Those are really important for Microsoft networking, and they're really vulnerable. So it's unwise to let those ports out of your local area network. You want those open for machines in your LAN so they can share files and folders and printers and such, but you don't want people on the internet connecting to those ports. 143 is IMAP, which is like POP3, lets you move email from the local email repository down to the clients. So let me show you some good things. You can use Telnet to connect to anything. I wanted to Telnet to Hills and show you the connection. Let's see if we can do it here. If I got a couple of command prompts open, I should be able to do it. Let's have this one doing netstat. Okay, and let's have another one. Okay, getting used to my Windows 7. There we go. Okay, let me try making it smaller instead of that. Okay, now I can probably do this. Let's just do Telnet. Hills.ccsa.edu. We do let people Telnet around here, although in my opinion we should not. Now I'm connected. It's asking me for a login. I'm not going to type my name and password into that screen because it's disgusting. But there you can see I have an established connection. I have sent a SYN, SYNAC, and ACK to connect, and now it has sent back this data for login. Now it's going to ask me to type in my name and password. In fact, I think it would probably be good to just demonstrate it, stealing this, since we're all set to go here. Hopefully I have Wireshark. I do. Life is good. Wireshark. You have to run it as administrator if you're using Vista or Windows 7 like I am. All right. In fact, let me break the connection with Control-C. Let's just close this window. Let's just throw in garbage and more garbage. Let it notice that that's no good and hang up. I don't want to retry. All right, I'm already tired of this. Close that window and open another one. Okay, there's probably some better way to hang up on it, but I never use Telnet. As you may have noticed, I don't like it much, so I'm not very good at it. Capture interfaces. There's my public interface. We'll start capturing, and let's get the whole story here. Okay, so telnet. I can just use up arrow, can't I? Nope, telnet, hills.ccsf.edu. Okay, now it's asking me to log in. I'm Sam. I'm going to type in fool for a password. And that's not my real password, but that lets me show you what happens. Stop. Okay, we should be able to find the whole story here. Someplace at the start, I connected to telnet. There's usual random traffic on my network, but here I am going from me up to telnet, sending a SYN. Now this port it chose was a random port 1257. That's being called shockwave. This is something I don't much like about Wireshark. It's too smart. It tries to interpret the port numbers by telling me what they are. I guess shockwave must be a game or something. So you'll find funny names on things. I'd sort of rather just see numbers. And there is some way to set Wireshark to it, but I keep forgetting, so I've gotten used to it. Anyway, here's my local high-numbered port, 1257, connecting to 23, telnet at the other end. So I send a SYN up to the server. This is from me up to the server, 147, 144, 12 is the Hills server. Then the server sends back to me SYN ACK. Then I send up to the server ACK. Now we're ready to go. We've made a deal. We're ready to transmit data. Not only that, if you take a look at this TCP packet that started it off, it had a sequence number. Now notice, Wireshark tells you the sequence number is 0. It's actually this mess down here, 2E2600A8. Because remember, I said in order to prevent you from being guessable, it chooses a random initial sequence number. But in order to make it easy for humans to read it, most packet snippers will subtract the starting value and call the first one 0 and the next one 1, so you can easily tell what's going on in the series of packets. So now that we've opened a socket, now we can send data, send SYN ACK and ACK. So now the server sends me some data, and my machine sends the server some data, server sends me some more data. Now right at the bottom here you see the data, so I'm just going to go down here until we see something we can read down there. At some point it sends me a login, and this looks, there it is, here's the packet, that it contains HP, Unix, Hills. It's starting to have stuff I can read down here. Then there's the login, right? It was up here? I had it somewhere, now I've lost it again. Here's data. Let me try this again. If I hit the air there, now I'm ready. Okay. There was the login. Here's the login. Okay, now I sent up some data after that. This was 11.8 seconds. Here's my acknowledgments. Then at 11.89, 11.9, I couldn't have typed it in yet. Someplace around here I typed in data. I'm looking for me sending up. Here goes some data. You should find my password in here. CCSF MSTP. I think you're going to see it one letter per packet, and I'm not going to struggle with this too much now. But 14 seconds, it's got to be here. Let's see if it's going to help me find it in the middle pane here. Telnet. There, data is S. Now we're in business. We're going to look at it here. That S at the very end is it. That's the S. Telnet data, S, A, M, that's my name, Sam. That's my username. The password goes the same way. Now it's going to send me some stuff back telling me to put in the password. Okay. So my password is going to be visible the same way. F-O-O-L. So one letter per packet, your password goes into clear, that's evil. But that's how Telnet works. All right. That's what I wanted to show you. The basic, you can see right there how it works. You can see it in NetStat, and you can grab the packets with Wireshark and see how it does all these things. You see the handshake. You see, if you can expand Wireshark down here and even see the status flags bit by bit, this is a SYN packet, so it's got SYN. A SYN ACK would have a 1 here and a 1 there. Wireshark is very nice, lets you totally see exactly what's going on. So, let's try one of these things. How many TCP ports are there? Pick one of those choices. Let me start my counter here. Okay, now it's listening. Whoa, there come the votes. All right. You should get this up to 35 or something. 26. There's more. There's got to be at least 35 out there. 28, we're getting there. 31. Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
You have 65,000 ports, but I can put that Windows actually prevents you like a maximum of TCP ports you can actually use.
Yeah, there is a limit to how many you can use at one time. Yeah. Let me just display this. I'll answer that one in a sec. So, yeah, so most people got it right. It's C, 65,000, 16 bits. Good. And he's right. Even though in principle the numbering system allows 65,000, in fact Windows has a limit on what ports you can use. It limits you to about 5,000, and so does Unix by default. There is a common registry hack to increase that. Under normal conditions, you'd think that would be enough, but for certain things like peer-to-peer file sharing, people want more. So you can give it more. Even though there are 65,000 available, Windows doesn't really use all of them by default. All right. Yeah, it's a very common hack people do to make their machine faster in networking. All right. Good. So we're on the road here. UDP. We talked about TCP. UDP is much faster, but it's unreliable. Now, it just sends data out. It doesn't even make sure the other end is listening at all. It doesn't ever acknowledge anything. So it never has to wait. Remember, TCP, you want to send something via TCP, you can't even send it yet. First, you've got to do SYN, SYNAC, ACK. Then, you can't send data yet. You can't send all of it. You can only send one window size worth of data, and then you wait until you get an ACK before you send any more. So that's nice. That makes the other end able to determine how fast you can send data so you doesn't get overwhelmed, but it slows everything down because you're constantly waiting for a packet to go there and a response to come back. UDP doesn't bother at all. It's like broadcast TV. You just have a transmitter, you send the stuff out, you don't even know or care who's listening. They can listen or not. It's not my problem. I just spit it out at full speed constantly. So it's good for things like radio and TV and streaming media. Because if you're listening to streaming music and somehow a packet gets lost, even if you request a resend and get that packet later, I don't want to hear those notes later, filling in the gap. Forget it. There was some static in the song. You just want to keep going. So there are certain applications like that where reliability is useless. And what you want is speed. So that's what UDP is for. You can have reliable data transfer over UDP if the higher levels, like the application layer, do somehow check and request another resend. But UDP by itself will not do that. So it is possible to run it fast and unreliable. All right, that's what's called connectionless. Now, the internet layer, the next layer down, is responsible for moving packets to the right machine. The transport layer moves them to the correct process on the machine with that port number. The internet layer is responsible for moving through the internet and getting to the right machine. So it's going to use an IP address. This is a meaningful address. For example, everything at City College starts 147, 144. So this is a logical address. It doesn't matter what brand of computer we have here. It has to start with that number or it's not going to be part of City College. And the routers know that so they can find us. ICMP operates in the internet layer. This is per ping and traceroute, used just to send command signals through the internet, most commonly just to see if something is alive or not. You send a ping. There are a few other options in ICMP queries, but the main thing you're doing is just seeing whether someone is there at all with a ping. There's various kinds of codes here. The most common is IPMP type 8, which is ping, are you there? And their answer is 0. Ping has suddenly become far less useful, by the way, because since Windows XP Service Pack 2, Windows machines no longer respond to pings by default. The firewall blocks them. If I ping to an older machine like the Hills server, ping hills.ccsf.edu, it will respond. This is what you normally do. I send some pings, it replies, I know it's there. I do this all the time just to see if my network connection is working. Windows machines by default will not answer these anymore, which is a security measure. One common, you can see how that could be useful because when people want to attack you, they might want to find your server. And what they typically run is a ping sweep to see who's there. Whoever responded to the ping, we will then follow with a port scan and attack. So if you just don't even answer the ping, you have a high chance of being overlooked. It's not a very brilliant security measure, but it's a way to hide. Like I have one of those things that goes to club that goes on my steering wheel, and my friends that fix cars laugh at me, that's stupid, you can just take a bolt out and get past it. And I say, yeah, but the car next to me doesn't have one. So I've made it a little bit harder to get in me. They'll just attack them. It's like two men running away from a tiger. And he says, we'll never outrun the tiger. He says, yeah, but I only have to outrun you. What's that?
That's what happened at the zoo.
That is what happened at the zoo, as a matter of fact. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah. Might be, yeah, you're right. Anyway, so something I wanted to show you. Oh, pings. Yeah, the NSA, these guys, responsible for cybersecurity, among other things, of the United States. And there are many scandals about them failing to do it. Well, this tells me that there is a server at www.nsa.gov. It accepted a request on port 80, and it handed out a website on port 80 for the glorious National Security Agency, which, by the way, is recruiting hackers. They were at the last DEF CON before this one. I went and saw the talk. This NSA guy was there saying, join the NSA. We're all friendly and open and nice, and you won't be like nasty and oppressive like it used to be. We're good guys now. And I sat there shocked. You got to be kidding. The NSA. I don't know. But anyway, they are recruiting hackers. I'm not sure I'd encourage you to take the job, but my friends with security clearances tell me that you don't want one. It's a heavy burden. But anyway, they are hiring hackers, so if you want it, you might want it. Anyway, let's try pinging them. NSA.gov. Nothing. They have a good firewall on their system. Now, so I can't ping the NSA. They don't answer ping. Somewhere between me and there's a firewall blocking pings traffic is the most likely answer. Now I can find it, the trace route. Trace route, www.nsa.gov. This is going to send a series of pings out from me, and they're going to have a low time to live. The first one's going to have a TTL of 1, so when it reaches the first router, it will time out, and that router will send to me an ICMP type 13 response, or I think maybe it's type 11, saying I ran out of time. So I'm going to find out every router between me and the NSA. So the first ones I hit are on campus, 147, 144, that's somewhere on campus. Here's another machine somewhere on campus. Here's some more machines on campus, CCSF. Then I go to Scenic, which is our internet service provider. They give discount internet service to colleges. Very nice service too. Then I went to, so here I went to Scenic. Now I'm to someplace called AboveNet in San Jose. And here I am at AT&T, and I just went across the country over to the East Coast because my latency just went from 4 milliseconds up to 80 milliseconds. So I just went across the country. Now I am at AT&T on the 12 network, and now I'm out of, the game is over. This device, 12, 110, 110, 132, is the last device I could see before I went past the firewall protecting the NSA. So you can do that. A certain amount of the route is public. Beyond a certain point, as they ought to, they've got a ruthless firewall not letting any nonsense through. And I can't see beyond that point with this technique. You can see beyond that point in many systems with another technique called firewalk that we use in a next class, but I don't recommend trying it on the NSA. Yeah.
So what are computers 21 and beyond? Are they still within the NSA?
All I know is they're on the other side of a firewall. All it's telling me is anything sent with a time to live of more than 20, I never get any response at all. So they're on the other side of something that blocks ICMPs. That's all I know. They are presumably inside the NSA's network. That's how things usually are. You have your company and you put a firewall on your internet connection like the college does. So there's one ruthless layer of protection there. Yeah?
Routers are like filtering out ICMPs and not replying more. So
Well, not by default they don't, but it is becoming more common to block ICMP. You aren't supposed to, according to the RFCs, because then some legitimate network traffic will get lost. But in practice, that doesn't be a big problem, and preventing the various attacks is more important. So a lot of people now block it, like the Windows firewall. Anyway, so it's just going to try until 30, which is as much as it tries. It gets no answer from anything. So I can only see so far into the NSA's network, which is a good thing, of course. You don't want these guys to get hacked, although they did, and heads rolled, I assume, and they probably beefed up their security. All right, here's what Wireshark looks like if you capture a ping. It just sends a ping request, you get a ping reply, type 8. Here's the request, type 8, the reply is type 0. All right, and I've got a little movie to play you, and then we can take a break. This is a fun movie. I wonder if I've already got it on this machine. I should. Yeah, you've probably seen this one. Yes, I should have it around here. There it is. Oh, glorious. Okay, let me see if I have sound. And I think I'll turn off the lights so this one's easier to see. You don't need to record it. It's on my website.